Internet! It is that time of the year. It is time to look back at 2023 and look at our favorite films. Now, this is how I do it. I personally call them favorite. It's not top, it's not best, it's not what I think are the better films. It's the ones I enjoyed the most. So there's going to be some movies on here that might surprise you. There's going to be some stuff that I know was technically more proficient, but this is my enjoyability of a film, including rewatchability, including what I think it does for cinema. It's a lot of factors, but these are my personal favorites. That doesn't mean your list is any better or worse. It means you had a different life that led to you to experience those films. Likewise, I had a different life that led me to experience these films this way. Please do like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Also, leave a comment below. Let me know what some of your favorites are. Now, in this case, I'm doing a top 23 of 2023. I sometimes do top 30s. There was so much goodness this year, but I want to be realistic with your attention span and expectations of time, so I'm doing a 23 of 2023. That being said, the honorable mentions this year are going to be Cocaine Bear, a meme come to life on screen. I had so much fun with this film, it almost made the cut. Anatomy of a Fall, I know a lot of people put this in their top 10. I enjoyed it, I just definitely felt like it was more of a procedural court case episodic than the movie that made my top 20. You know, it's good, but it's not as good as some of the other ones I enjoyed more. For me, John Wick 4 was right on the cusp. It didn't quite make it. I enjoyed the first two a lot more than the most recent two, just because I liked the looking at the rules in that way, where it felt like there was more nuance in the bullet play and the dance of it all. Personally, I like the first new Boar. Equalizer 3, maybe my favorite of the trilogy, almost made the top 20. Dumb Money is so very good and so very funny, and it definitely was right on the cusp. Love the cast, love the story, love how we all just lived through it, and the fact that that movie pretty much felt like a period piece, even though it just happened. It's insane how different the world is from 3 years ago, so they can make a period piece about 3 years ago and it actually feels like another time. Dumb Money was right there at the cusp. Knock at the Cabin, another one that was really close, because it basically, I loved the ending for what the ending was, because of how we expected it to go, because of who made the film. It felt like a very self-aware ending to a director that's known for his endings. Scream 6, likewise, really enjoyed the meta-narrative, had a good time with it. Those are my honorable mentions for 2023. So, let's get into the list. Coming in at number 23 is The Covenant. Now, this is a movie that probably a lot of you haven't heard of. This is a movie that didn't get the marketing I think it should have. This is a movie that had to add Guy Ritchie to the front of the title. It was called Guy Ritchie's The Covenant by the time it left theaters. I love Guy Ritchie. I expected a lot from this. I'm a huge fan of Jake Gyllenhaal. I expected a lot from this. This was even better than I expected. The tension was unreal. I love the sound design. I always love his scores. This was an exceptional use of so many different instruments that you'd expect for an action movie. I loved the pacing. I really like that we've seen movies like this before, but this is telling it in an original way, and that's the power of cinema, is telling, re-sharing, reinterpreting narratives. I thought this was a genius bond of brothers, and we've seen a lot of war movies. When they're exceptional, they really stand out, and I feel like The Covenant doesn't get enough love. It might not be the most technically proficient film. Maybe one of those other ones I just mentioned, honorable mention, is more your cup of tea, but my enjoyment of this film was next level, and the caliber of filmmaking here. Guy Ritchie, when he's doing this, is who I want behind so many films. He can make franchise films, he can make indies, but when he's gritty and down in the dirt with an actor like Jake Gyllenhaal, when Jake Gyllenhaal has a director like Guy Ritchie that's pushing him to the edge, that's putting him at that 11, magic happens. I love The Covenant. Coming in at number 22, another probably surprise for many people, Extraction 2. I know this is a made-for-Netflix movie, and I know that has a certain amount of tropes, but I also know it's a type of movie I'm missing. It is very much an 80s action movie, whether it's the dialogue, whether it's some of the frames chosen, whether it's the sound mic drop, the needle drop moments, whether it's some of the acting choices by Hemsworth and various villainous goons. All of that's at play, but with a more modern story. It's got all of the elements of the 80s movies I love, but with a modern narrative and modern technology, and most of all, a DP who is absolutely out of their mind, and a director who knows how to shoot action because he used to be a stunt coordinator and stuntman. I love everything about the action in this film. I love the rules behind this film. I love that we reinvent action whenever we get an Extraction movie. I would rather see Extraction 3 than another 3 Thors any day of the week. I love the playfulness. I love the joy in the action. I love the chaos of this movie. This is what I want out of action films. For me, this is what I miss about 80s action to scale, but with today's technology, and that's all I could have asked for. That's number 22, Extraction 2. Coming in at number 21 is the complete opposite. This is The Killer. The Killer was a very, very slow burn, very methodical, very precise film, but the precision is almost a commentary to me on the director himself. This felt like a movie that if you didn't know David Fincher's work very well, it might be boring. Or if you do, this might not be your type of humor. This is one of the funniest movies of the year, and it's also, to me, a man making fun of himself in a very interesting way. I think David Fincher knows his reputation as a man that does 37 takes. I think he's known as the man who is very methodical, down to the wire. I have to throw this stack of papers 100 times to get it to work, speaking of Jake Gyllenhaal. But I think that the man has a self-awareness about himself, that this almost felt like a combination of, I made Fight Club, it got misinterpreted, here's my apology love note to Fight Club. Like both an apology and a love note. This is a movie about an assassin that is incapable of letting things go. It felt like if you're obsessed with Fincher, it was made for you, and Fincher's my favorite director. This felt very made for me. It definitely, I wish it was higher. This was one of my most anticipated movies of the year. It wasn't what I wanted it to be, but what it ended up being made me very happy, and it's so unique that I wanted to include it in at least a shout out here. So it comes in at my number 21, The Killer. Very weird, very fun time, if not methodical and overly precise and a bit overdone, but I think very intentionally. Also one of the best fight scenes of the year, with the best sound design in a fight scene I heard all year. Really loved it. Coming in at number 20 is my biggest surprise of the year, to be honest. I knew I was looking forward to this film, but it didn't make my top anticipated. I was worried they couldn't bring the magic back from a franchise I really enjoy. It is the new Hunger Games film. Hunger Games is a franchise that really elevated young adult fiction for me. It's a franchise that doesn't get enough love. I think we talk about great franchises. It is something that is trusting of its audience. It really is brutal, and it shows the horrors of war, but using kids in a really traumatic way. And this new one elevates that. It escalates that. This movie is able to make you care about brand new characters as much as you care about characters you had for 4 movies, and is able to manipulate you to such a level that you forget you're watching a prequel. This movie is about someone we hate years down the road. This is a villain origin story, and it's so captivating. There are times I thought, maybe this isn't the one where he breaks bad. Maybe he'll do that in a sequel. Like, I was so enamored at seeing someone make all the wrong choices for all the right reasons, and all the right choices for all the wrong reasons, turning into a villain. I was gobsmacked at the performances. I was so impressed at the way Francis Lawrence came back and made that world feel whole again in an all new way. And I think a prequel was the direction. You can't do a sequel to how Hunger Games ended, so a prequel I was worried about. Historically, prequels don't land well because there's less tension, there's less stakes. This one had all the tension and stakes you could need, and it's a beautiful, deserving addition to a very good, underappreciated now franchise. Coming in at number 19, All of Us Strangers. All of Us Strangers broke my heart so many different ways. It is a movie, I don't want to give spoilers because I know it's not wide yet, but it's a movie that has elements to it you don't expect, and when they land, you realize that makes the movie so much better for it. It is a movie that seems like it's one genre and it's another, but it never feels like it's a bait and switch. It is a powerful love story with some of the best performances of the year in a movie that feels so contained and real and wholesome. Every performance in this feels grounded and true. I loved how melancholic it was. I loved how broken I was. I loved how sorrowful I felt. I loved how beautiful love is and how much I felt that during the film. I love that it doesn't go any of the way you expect it to. I love that more people are going to discover Andrew Scott and Paul Mescal. I love this movie. I love that the opening of the film, I was like, why would they cast these people as this? And then as things develop, it's so perfect. The third act is one of the best landings for this second genre that the film is, and the love story is just as powerful as the ending. I really, really loved this film. Check out All of Us Strangers. At number 18, we've got Talk to Me. Now, I am not a big horror movie guy, so anything I want to say in the horror genre, please take with a grain of salt. That is my most casual of genres, but for me, this is what I love about horror. I'm a big Scream guy. I love Cabin in the Woods. I love franchise horror from the 80s like Freddy and Jason. And to me, this feels like a modern franchise in that it's got the iconography, it's got immediately memorable characters, it's got all the lore you could hope for in world building, and it's immediately relatable to the time. I love going back and watching 80s and 90s horror because it always feels like a time capsule. It always feels like it completely encapsulates the people of the time. And this, to me, is today in a really unique way. You're seeing a lens into how we might look back at us in the future through these immediately iconic characters. I love the iconography of the hand. I love the lore of what the hand is and how that arc develops and evolves. I love how much world building there can be around that. I love how interpretive it is. I love the directing style. This is from a duo that was a YouTube duo that are now directing feature films, and this was handled really well by A24. I think their marketing was clever because it kept the mystery alive, but it gave you enough of the imagery to really pull you into what Talk to Me was going to be. And it's immediately, like, I still remember, like, talk to me. And, like, the elements leading up to this film enhance the experience. I'll always remember the lead up to The Dark Knight. I'll always remember the lead up to Cloverfield. I think movies, when they can be eventized, should. I think when you want to remember something remarkably, make it remarkable. Make it marketable and remarkable. And I really think Talk to Me is all those things, and I think it's got legs. I think I'm excited for Talk to Me 7. I want a Final Destination-esque saga again. I love Final Destination. For all the reasons I listed, I love this, and this feels like a modern, current franchise that can go on, and it scared the crap out of me. To top it all off, in addition to all the things I said about good filmmaking, it was terrifying to me. I'm sure if you're a seasoned veteran of horror, you were fine. I wasn't. I was scared shitless, which I enjoyed. I really had a great time in the theater being scared. I love that the sound design fucked me up. I love that I thought about it for a long time after. It is the first time a horror movie has made my top 20 in a while. Scream got an honorable mention, and I know a lot of that is legacy. I know a lot of that is me loving the franchise. So for a new one to crack the top 20, number 18 is pretty high for a horror movie for me. I love To Talk to Me quite a bit. Coming in at number 17 is a movie that actually had been a lot higher as I let time pass. I was like, I can't put it that high. It's my own personal bias, and yes, this is my list, but I don't want it to be just because of the directorial debut of the great Bill Burr. It is Old Dads. Old Dads made my top 20, man. Old Dads made me laugh so hard. Old Dads had me belly laughing throughout, and I don't get that with a lot of comedies. There every so often, I'd say every 5 comedies that I see, and I only see like 1 out of every 10 comedies. Like, a lot of comedies come out in the year, and most of them just don't suit me, and most of them I don't rewatch. I think I'll be rewatching Old Dads. This is a very rewatchable, very funny to me film. It reminds me of certain 2000s comedies like Role Models, but with today's sensibilities, with the mastery of Bill Burr. And I think some of the biggest complaints people gave it were it felt like a Bill Burr stand-up set made into a movie, which is exactly how you get my butt in a seat. I want a Bill Burr stand-up set made into a movie. So if you don't like Bill Burr, you're not going to like this. If you don't want a comedy that feels like a throwback to a bygone era, you probably won't like this. But if you miss a certain type of comedy, and if you love Bill Burr, this is going to be your jam as much as it was mine. It's on Netflix, directorial debut by the great Bill Burr. Really fun cast, Bobby Cannavale, Bokeem Woodbine. It is so unique in its delivery of some comedy, but it hits all the beats of a standard comedy. So it's color by numbers in some of the arc, but where it finds nuance in the nooks and crannies is well worth the journey. Check out Old Dads. Coming in at number 16 is the most heart-wrenching performance, I think, of the year, at least for me, and that's saying something considering we just talked about All of Us Strangers. I think one of the best performances I've seen from an actor in a long time, and finally he's going to get his flowers performance for Zac Efron, is The Iron Claw. I've been a huge Zac Efron fan forever. I think this is finally the role to point at and go like, no, he's as incredible as a lot of us have thought. I've been a big fan of him for a long time, and this is just an undeniable work. Like, this is just incredible, top to bottom. Not just the physicality of looking like that Adonis that Zac Efron has carved himself out to be, but he is able to tackle toxic masculinity and tackle the brokenness of guys. Like, there's a lot of movies about a good guy going bad or a bad guy turning good, and there's a lot of movies about what it means to be a man, but there's not a lot of movies about how men are expected to be, what society expects of us, what men expect of other men. And this is a broken journey that I know a lot of people identify with, and it's so heart-wrenching and it's so painful, and the supporting cast is fantastic. Jeremy Allen White is also just riveting, and not enough love out there for Holt McCallumley. This dude is always great. He's like a Fincher regular. I've been a fan of him since Fight Club. I was 11 when that came out. This guy has been incredible for years, and he really gets to flex in this as the father, the patriarch of the Von Erich family. If you don't know, I didn't know the extent of the Von Erich story, the curse, and I'm glad I didn't because it was really well delivered, and then I immediately researched everything about them because of how powerful this movie was, so highly recommend. In any other year, I think my top 10 list would start here. That's how good this year was. That this is my number 16. It would make my top 10 most years, maybe not 1999, but most years, my top 10 would include The Iron Claw, number 16, stretching it out. What a year for cinema, The Iron Claw, some of the best performances I've ever seen. What a time. Just bring tissues and strap in. All right, now we're into, like I said, what would be any other top 10. This was in my top 10 most of the year. I loved it immediately, and then the end of the year just had so many just powerhouses. Number 15 is Gran Turismo. Not only is Gran Turismo an incredible biopic, not only is Gran Turismo an incredible sports film, not only is Gran Turismo somehow the best video game movie of all time, it does all of those things while never changing genres narratively or emotionally or in its pacing, but is mastering all three of those. It's like a mashup. It's like a remix of a jazz song with new lyrics that works. It's so many things happening at once, and all the while inspiring the fuck out of you. All the while delivering on what it means to be a great biopic, in that you want to be better as a person. What it means to be a great sports film, in that you just rally and you have all this energy and hope. What it means to be a great video game film, in that it reminds you what you love of the video game, while also giving game fans, like, I loved Gran Turismo PS2 and earlier. I just haven't played the newer ones, but it gave me moments where I was like, oh, that frame, that shot, that usage, genius. Neil Blomkamp, this is my favorite of his since District 9, maybe as much as District 9, and this is such a great role for David Harbour. Like, this is that uncle you want to impress that is so grumpy, so hard. Like, this is, I think, what we love him as on Stranger Things, or in, smaller films, or his great Santa movie, like, but at an 11, because it's the mentor role, so you can change some of the dynamics. You're inherently loving this guy because you know where he's going to land. It's so good. Check out this movie. Gran Turismo is really surprising, and I know a lot of people got sick of seeing the trailer. Please don't let the overplaying of the trailer keep you from seeing it. Number 15, Gran Turismo. Everything I want in a sports film, a biopic, a video game movie. It's right there with Sonic as the best video game movie of all time. Sorry, Sonic 2. It's hard to judge. They're right there. They're neck and neck, but it might be Gran Turismo now. In a race analogy, they're neck and neck. Who knows who's going to finish up here? But yeah, Gran Turismo, number 15. Coming in at number 14 is Poor Things. This is one of those movies that is such a visual masterpiece. This is one of those movies that makes you love the feel of cinema, the grain of movies, and the performances are absolutely next level. Not only does Emma Stone give a career best and maybe, the Oscar love by end of year, but it's so genius in her performance being 10 performances. When you see the film, you'll see what I'm saying, but there's an innocence in the opening that doesn't leave, but the naivete leaves, and there's a fumblingness that goes away because of the narrative that she's so good at knowing what day that character exists in, and there's so many little tiny micro choices, and it all lends to great comedy and great drama, which good comedies do. It also has some very interesting conversations about what it means to treat people a certain way. It also is a bafflingly unique performance by Mark Ruffalo. This guy has played one thing for a very long time, and this is the opposite, and he's so good at it, and he's such a fun Lothario. He's such a fun charmer, chauvinist, preposterous man. Love him in this. Willem Dafoe has had like one of the best 6-year runs maybe in cinema. He's always good, but he's especially great here. I'm just so impressed. This movie, visually, comedically, narratively, it's got some Burton, it's got some Guillermo del Toro, it's got what you love about whimsy and wonder, but it's all dark and depraved, and it's very sex positive, but also has some questions about that. It also puts you in a position of wondering how you feel about certain things. It is so good and different and empowering and delightful. Check out Poor Things. It is a weird fucking time. All right, number 13, the opposite type of film. We're going from full esoteric poetry of a film to a sports film. Creed 3 is poetry, but very different poetry. Creed 3 is so great. And I say great as in like awesome, like full of awe. It is so big and robust and powerful. And it's the directorial debut of Michael B. Jordan, and it feels like Michael B. Jordan training. It feels like a montage of just someone hitting all cylinders. It feels like someone just finding their rhythm in a sport and getting into flow state, and the movie feels like flow state. So much so that it does some insane things narratively. It takes some really wild directorial swings, and that's bold for a first-time director. And it also gives you two leads that do feel like when a comic book nails something in a villain and a hero being two sides of the same coin, this does that really well, but in sports. It's got anime influences very clearly in the characters and the directing. It's got comic book influences, and not just because it's Kang and Killmonger, but it's got influences of that type of narrative, and it's on screen in a sports movie that feels very gritty, but also larger than life. That's why I say great. It's just so much film. I love where they took Tessa Thompson's character. I wish there's a little bit more of her. That's why it's not a little higher. I love where it lands. I love every feeling I got. I love that I was rallying the whole time. It made me want to train. It made me want to work out, which I love that sports movies can do. It really impressed me with Michael B. Jordan, and it really, really impressed me with what Jonathan Majors brought to the table. We'd seen him as Kang. We'd seen him in The Last Black Man in San Francisco. We've seen a lot of him, but this was a new take, and it was so captivating. You couldn't take your eyes off him, and you couldn't take your eyes off Michael B. Jordan. So having two leads just so diametrically opposed but so similar in so many ways was fantastic. What a great sports film. And it's also following in Rocky's footsteps. Like, what a shadow to cast than being the third film in a reboot sequel series, and you're directing it yourself. Like, what a debut. And I talk about Creed all the time. I think it's one of the best reboots of all time. This being the third one in that and being this good, impossible. And here it is. All right, number 12 is going to be Past Lives. Past Lives is one of those rare love stories that not only puts you in a position of thinking about your own life and your own loves and your own passion, but it makes you wonder what lives other people are living and what they feel. Like, if you ever fly and you look down at all of the cars and the houses and the lights, and you get that sense of wonder with a little bit of melancholy, and a little bit of just like captivating pondersomeness. This captures that, but with love, and it's wonderful. And it also gives you performances that earn that pondering. I really love when a film makes me feel like the characters, but I love even more when a film makes me feel like I'm in someone else's life in a way that's welcoming, and it makes me feel like I've lived another life, and this does that. I mean, the title is very apt. It also is a very interesting story about love in not a traditional way. It also really has you wondering where it's going to land by the way it opens. It has these two beautiful bookends of narrative. It's just so different. I'd love to see the script. It's so unique in the way it brings you in. Really enchanting film. That's the word I'm going to use. It's an enchanting film. Check out Past Lives. All right, we're almost to our top 10, but first we have number 11. This was so close to making the top 10, and honestly, it's insane how much it mirrors two of the other films in the top 10. I discovered a new genre this year. I love biopics about stories that could have been documentaries, but they make a narrative out of it, and I fall madly in love with every character I didn't know was going to be important to me. Tetris. Tetris is one of the craziest stories ever. Tetris is filled with like espionage and Cold War insanity. It's filled with like hacking and game corporation takeover violence. It's filled with what Video Game Foundation is and why we love games. It gives you such an inspirational story while also being a Cold War story, while also being a story about Tetris that I never realized was so captivating. Tetris is probably the most common game next to solitaire, and it's in all of our minds. We can hear the song, we can see the squares, but I didn't know it's one of the most captivating true life stories ever, and it's Taron Egerton just absolutely slaying in an Apple original movie. It is a movie where I'm so glad they gave it the budget to take some weird third act style choices. After it's been one film for a very long time, they throw some craziness at the end and they let it be that weird. It's really just edge of your seat thriller, like a 90s espionage film, but with Tetris. Like, it's so weird and great and funny. It's very uniquely funny. Had a really good time with it. Taron Egerton is a movie star, and it's really great to see a movie star get to make a movie that they don't really make anymore, which is like a 90s espionage thriller, in this case about Tetris. It's so good and so different. Number 11, Tetris. Alright, so this video was originally going to be the entire top 23, but as you can tell, I have enjoyed these films quite a bit, so I've been going a little long, so this is going to end up being part 1 of 2. You're going to find part 2 on this very page later on today. Tomorrow latest, hopefully later on today. I'm a very slow editor, but part 2 right here, same page for my top 10, and I will tease that my number 10 is a lot of people's top 3. Oppenheimer. But we'll talk about my top 10 in its entirety over on that video, which hopefully I learned how to link. Guys, YouTube's hard. Find it here, or just find it on this page. All right, I'll see you there. Follow me so I can learn how to YouTube.